So the advice I would probably give to you is, one, I'd want to understand what position and or what focus you want to be. But if you want to be in the NFL, you got to make sure you get a great education, because being smart will serve you well in this league or any league. I'm Ndamukong Suh, entrepreneur, engineer, and football player, and you're watching Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Hey, I'm Brian Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with the incredible Super Bowl champion, Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you, Brian?
I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
Yes. How did I get this job? I went to college, enjoyed an amazing time at the University of Nebraska, graduated in engineering, construction management specifically, and then I was fortunate enough to be the second overall draft pick to the lovely city of Detroit.
Who else was in your class that year that was being drafted? Give us some context, what year that was, and who else was in that sort of top five with you?
Yeah, I was drafted in the 2010 draft. Unfortunately, I was not the number one pick, which I was unhappy about, but everything happens for a reason. Sam Bradford was the number one pick. I ended up being number two, and then you had Gerald McCoy. Funny enough, went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's where I'm at now, or just finished up. And then number four, I believe was Eric Berry. And then number five was an offensive tackle to the Washington football team now.
Yeah. Let's go back in the chronology. I want to maybe come back to that moment of the draft, but let's go back in time to young Ndamukong. And you're thinking about what? What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a little kid?
Wow. As a little kid, I was fascinated with airplanes. So every time we got on a plane, I was super lucky to go visit my sister in college or go play soccer as a young boy, traveling around, or even AAU basketball. And we really had the opportunity to go into the old days. You got to go into the cockpit and talk to the pilots and see all the different controls, and you get the little wings, which was awesome. I wanted to be a pilot, but moved away from it from a standpoint of kind of getting too big and too tall, and people saying, hey, it's a little tough for you to kind of fit into a cockpit, which funny enough, I'm at an older age, got to fly a G3 a while, which was fun, but kind of moved away from being the pilot piece and followed in my dad's footsteps. My dad's a mechanical engineer, so it runs in our family being engineers and being on job sites, construction sites, everything. I just got a passion with working with my hands and being involved with building things from the start to finish. So really took the passion in wanting to be an engineer, and went to school with that mindset and didn't look back.
So did you get influenced? And I ask this question with context because, a lot of people watch this show, and I don't think it has anything to do with age. I think, a lot of people are they're middle age right now, and they're thinking about resetting their career because they're either not happy or they've just lost everything. It's a tough time. Or, you're coming right out of college and you're wondering, what should I do with my life? Did you get signals, or did your parents try and steer you into a certain path? Your dad's an engineer. Did you say, hey, son, this has been great for me. Looks like you've got the brains for this. I want you to kind of follow my footsteps. Or did he kind of persuade you in one way or the other? Or how'd you navigate that?
No, truthfully, both my parents didn't push me anywhere. And even when my decision came to what university I wanted to go for playing football and going to school, first and foremost, my mom being a teacher and my dad being an engineer, and both of them being from third world countries in Jamaica and Cameroon, they were like, we really don't care what you do, but you're going to get your education in something. So you're going to get a degree no matter what. And so that's actually what gave me my decision at the very end as a junior in college. My mom said, you got a choice. You can go pro and we're going to support you, but one thing you're going to do is promise me that you come back and finish this degree. And I said, you know what, I'm not even going to leave, because once I leave, I know I don't have the mindset to want to come back to school. So I'm going to stay another year and finish. And then I finished, and which was the best decision for myself, and it actually helped my draft status. So a win-win all around. So if I was pushed in anything, my mom mandated that I needed to finish my degree.
Yeah. Aside from the obvious, you're a specimen. You have the DNA to play in, right up there on the defensive line. But like, aside from that, did you have any other signals like, pro sports was my path versus the academic route or the pure business route? What are the signals were you getting that this was the right choice?
Yeah, signals for me from when it came to sports was early on in my freshman year, being hurt, being able to sit back and watch a guy named Adam Carricker, who ended up being, I think, the 10th overall pick to the St. Louis Rams in like I want to say the 2006 draft or 2005 draft, one of the two. Being able to work out with him every single day as a young kid, as a freshman, it's like, wow, I can do almost everything he does. Imagine what I'm able to do if I take another 3 or 4 years and get to his same age. Like, I feel like I can succeed and be beyond where his status was. And really, I had the roadmap and then just kind of made it my own. So that was really exciting for myself. But I always had a two-pronged approach. I wanted to go professional. I wanted to take care of my family from that perspective, obviously knowing what would be afforded to me from a monetary standpoint as well as an exposure standpoint, but then also being able to come back and say, hey, my dad has his own company. I want to come back and add value to his company from an engineering perspective and build on that. And we've been able to do that over the last 10 years of my career, still being a professional football player and still be able to build things and have fun together between me and my dad. And I mean, even now we're finishing my house here in Portland. And we're working on HVAC systems together and going through different touch-ups in our house that we love. So
that's really cool. I mean, it sounds like you had several different options. It sounds like the other thing that I'm hearing you say too is this really important characteristic, which is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. It sounds like you had the awareness enough that you knew you had the brains to go into engineering or build things, or maybe even if things didn't work out with your plan A, you'd go work with your dad or branch off of that, use that as a springboard. But you're also aware of your other talents. Talk to me about early sports. Did you always play football, or did you play Pop Warner and all that stuff, or did you play other sports?
No, actually, I came out of the womb playing soccer, and I say that because my father playing professional soccer, as we call it, football overseas in Germany, it was a standpoint of the soccer ball was right at my feet day one. And so I love that sport, just kind of outgrew it from a height and weight standpoint and had more fun playing football. But my ultimate passion was truthfully being able to play basketball. I just wish I was 2 more inches taller. I definitely could see myself in the NBA and or playing at high levels overseas like one of my best friends.
Yeah, that's super cool. Talk to me about your morning routine. Give me an idea of maybe during the season and postseason. Do you have the same kind of regime? Do you wake up at a certain time? Do you eat a certain thing?
Yeah, for my routine on a typical basis, whether I'm in season or off season like I am now, I'm usually up in and around 5:30, 6 o'clock at the latest. When it's off season like it is now, I try to get up, work out, and then have the rest of the day from probably 8:30, 9 on to be able to do kind of whatever I want to do from a standpoint of business, family stuff, and or entrepreneurship, and being able to learn and grasp new concepts. So a little insight of my current weeks right now, I wake up in the morning 5:30, finish around 8:30, and then kind of move on. And I'm in an externship right now with a Fortune 50 company in Target, and being able to learn a bunch of different things with them, which is super exciting and a lot of fun. And then later on this afternoon, for example, I've got a bunch of real estate meetings from a standpoint of being able to continue to build my portfolio there. And I have a partner that I have a development company with as we continue to expand and make change here in Pacific Northwest, and especially in Portland.
I want to dig a little bit deeper, unpack that a little bit more on the detail, because, I mean, I guess I'm speaking for myself too, but I know my audience, you know, when you get to that certain age, you can't eat 12 tacos and you know, stay up till 4 a.m. and then wake up in the next morning and expect to, you know, pop right up. Are there any habits, good habits that you've developed that you can maybe speak to give some advice to people who have a super active lifestyle and are trying to, you know, they're in that hustle mode, but they're also trying to take care of themselves and feel great? And
yeah, for myself, I would say lifestyle habits that I love to be able to focus on is, one, getting to bed early, and that's usually around 8:30, 9 o'clock, for sure, sleep by 10, and making sure I'm getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but then also being able to compartmentalize and really just focused on time management. Time management is one of the most effective pieces. I pride myself on being early, at the same time being able to be on point and prepared for things each and every single day. And so having built a team, as well as my lovely wife who takes great care of me, and just being able to make sure I can execute at a high level, and being able to, at the same time, I think it's important to be able to say no when you can't do certain things and not stretch your time thin. I think it's important. It's a combination of those different pieces, but if I would pick any specific pieces out of kind of that whole body of lifestyle changes, lifestyle focuses I have, I'd probably say compartmentalizing things, as well as being able to have great time management.
yeah, do you have an assistant, or like, is your phone your assistant? Like, who does someone manage your time for you?
I'm very on my own with things, but I do have an assistant that helps me with organizing different things and being able to be on time and just follow-ups and making sure I'm on point with things. So it's definitely good to have help, and it always, as you especially move into the business world, it's super important to just be organized and have things in place and be able to delegate things, especially things that you know can be handled on a different basis.
Yeah. Are you going into your 12th season or 11th season?
Just finished my 11th season, so going into my 12th. Excited about it.
Okay, so let's go back to the early seasons and stay on habits for a second. So what are some of the bad habits or things that you sort of got rid of in your life? Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. You know, a lot of people struggle with just, you know, sustainability. And, you know, I'm thinking about one of your teammates, number 12, you know, who has a very disciplined diet regimen. You know, he's 40 something, right? And he's got to take care of himself. So what are some of these early habits that you got rid of in order to, you know, be at the top of your game, play at high level?
Yeah, I would say early habits that I kind of got rid of would be simple things of just eating nonsense all the time, not focusing on my body and being diligent when it comes to workouts and or ancillary pieces, different modalities to take care of my health. And then probably like more or less on the diet and nutrition side of things, just making a good investment in having a private chef, and one that understands like what quality food is, and being able to maneuver between multiple different types of diets. And then I owe a lot of credit to my performance director that I have. And you speak of teams, just being able to build a team that's been consistent with myself from, I mean, early days in Detroit, from a physical therapist to my performance director that I speak to every single day and I'm here with in the off season every single day, and then the private chef, and then obviously my amazing wife, like I said, who's been with me for a long period of time. Just that overall collective group has been what's allowed me to play at a high level and really just get better through the years.
Yeah. So Walk me through it. What are you having for breakfast? What are you having for lunch? What do you eat for dinner? Like, are you like carnivore? Are you eating meat? Are you a total vegetarian? What are you eating?
So right now I'm actually on a pescatarian diet, and so each off season we take the opportunity to kind of go and try different diets, see how my body reacts and adjusts. You don't want to do this in season because obviously it's all about high performance. But from a diet perspective, we do blood work to understand what things that I'm intolerable to.
Yeah.
And then also we look at urinalysis, where you look at different things and what your body needs and doesn't need.
Hydration and all that.
Hydration is always a big piece, whether it's spring water or filtered water, being able to mix between both of those. And so from my perspective, it's just continuing to evolve and find different ways to find that extra 0.5% or extra percent that I can get better at, and fine tuning it, because we've got an amazing program and it's probably anywhere from 97, 98% dialed in, but there's always a 2 to 3% that you can find better, and that's what we work on in the off season.
Yeah. Do you take vitamins, for example?
Yeah, daily vitamins, no question, and just really just being able to work with a naturopath as well, looking at the natural ways to feed your body and get your body to its optimal levels.
Does any of this come from the team? For someone who doesn't know inside the league, does the team dictate, you got to eat this, you got to do that, or is it all going to come individually?
That's actually a great question, and none of it actually comes from the team. All of my team members that I work with and support me and my family are all outside sources from the team. And I think it's as I've first gotten into the league and some of my early on experiences, I noticed that I needed to really build a team outside of my everyday team. One, because it needs to be solely focused on myself and dialing that in. And there's, at any given time, there's 53 guys to 90 guys on a football team. So be able to get that individual access and focus, even though you may be a top guy, it's very difficult in the team setting.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've felt for a long time. Just as a non-professional athlete, just as a human being, thinking, isn't it so strange that we're still taking sort of generic medicine that is, medicine that has all of these disclaimers, like, if you take it, your ears might fall off, or, it could stunt your growth. It's like, I can't wait for the day when we have like this really personalized, customized, either to our biology or to our DNA specifically, and it just gets so dialed in that it's like super hyper specific.
Yeah, I think there's some amazing companies on an entrepreneurship side of things that I've been able to work with and connect with that really focus on some of those different pieces. But I think it's also people not being able to just go with kind of the social norm and just say, hey, I'm gonna do what everybody else is doing. Everybody's body is individually different than, even though you may come from the same parents. I got an older sister, we got the same exact parents, but our DNA is drastically different in different ways. One, because we're boy and girl, but then two, there's so many different things that she's dealing with, different things I'm dealing with. And I wouldn't say there's a wrong path, whether to go to the naturopathic way or the Western medicine way or Eastern medicine or everything. It's just finding what's best for you as an individual and making that all encompassing and taking the time to do that. It's really, I would say you got to take the time to go in and dive into those things.
Yeah, if I could just add my 2 cents. One of the best things I have done in my life, and I started it way too late, is just to get a blood test every single year, just as a benchmark, just to see, have my hormones changed, or, or levels in certain, just check my levels. I wish I'd been doing that since my 20s, and then I could have markers like where I was in my 20s versus now where I am sort of middle age. I regret not doing that. I wish I'd done that every single year, but point taken, I like that. Let's shift gears back to that draft day, back to 2010. What is going through your mind when you're thinking about where you're going to end up? Detroit is a fantastic city. They've got a legacy team. just like many of the teams in the NFL. But what's going through your mind? Are you thinking, you know, I'm coming into a program that hasn't won in a long time. I'm going to change. I'm going to be the game changer here. Like give us some context of what's going through your mind.
Yeah, for sure. Context when it comes to me being drafted in 2010, that spring, I was penciled in to be a top 5 pick, and as we got closer, it went to a top 3 pick. So the 3 teams were St. Louis at the time, Detroit, and then obviously Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which was very interesting. I've never been to the South, so I had an affinity to want to go check out Tampa. Took a visit there, took a visit also to Detroit and St. Louis. And really, when it all came down to it, I'm competitive. So I wanted to be number 1 overall, no matter what it was. And so kind of hearing the whispers in the wind and saying they're most likely going to take the quarterback was a little frustrating. And then a lot of people don't know, Tampa actually asked me to drop down a pick to come to them. And I said, I'm not going to do that, but what you can do, because you have a bunch of extra picks, because I think they had like maybe 10 picks in the draft, you can give up some of your picks and come get me, no question. And so I didn't know behind the scenes that Detroit was like, we know that St. Louis isn't going to pick you, they're going to do the quarterback, and we're not letting you get past 2. So once that all came to fruition on draft day, being in New York with my family and friends, which was an amazing and a great blessing to be able to encounter that. So I feel bad for the guys in this day and age that won't experience that. But got drafted and really was like, I see all the terrible things about Detroit and hear all the terrible things about it, especially with the downturns that have gone by and happened in the automotive industry. But you know what? Everything happens for a reason. Let me go into this city with open eyes, open ears, and open arms. And really that's what was received. That's how I was received, in open arms from the city of Detroit. And so, like you said earlier, having that mindset of being able to say, hey, I want to be a difference maker. They got some great pieces already, Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, a couple other guys. Let me be a linchpin to be able to come in and change this organization. And I think I was able to do that in some aspects, and not alone. I think they also did some other great things with making some different changes, and we did an amazing job in 2014, 2011, getting to the playoffs, and had some rough years in there and in between, especially my first year. But we definitely tried to change the tempo and the mindset for that organization, and not being a losing organization.
You've had your share of rough times. You've gone through it. The media has tried to chew you up and spit you out a bit too. Let's talk about that. How did you manage that? Let's talk about some of the hard times, some of the hard things you had to do early on.
Yeah, some of the hard times, and you're 100% right, and some of it due to my own doing, but then also I believe a lot of the narratives were not necessarily fair, and like you said, the media tried to chew me up and spit me out, but I had to be true to who I am, and true to who my parents brought up as a strong young black man in America. And so for myself, I looked at it from a standpoint of there's always trials and tribulations, but if you can't withstand those things and handle them, they most likely wouldn't be put in your life. And so I just put my head down, focused on the things that I knew I needed to focus on, compartmentalize the things that I could control, and just really move forward. And I had a strong family base that gave it to me super raw and truthfully, very tough times, but having them with me that throughout those pieces pushed me along to get to where I am right now. And being consistent to who you are and working through all those different pieces and understanding that you're still an amazing human being, that you can, one, beat these things and become a champion, let alone, even more important, a great human being.
I mean, as I was watching from the outside in, it seems like you were trying, people are trying to label you as a bully or a brute, or how would you describe it? What were you going through at the time?
kind of looking at it from a standpoint in the league, there's always been a big focus of there's a pretty boy of the league, and then you have kind of the mean, gritty defensive guy in the league, and then you have like the staple human being of who the league is. And I would say even in this day and age, kind of that main person has been, from a defense perspective, as of late, it's been Aaron Donald. From kind of the pretty boy is kind of the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady type guys, and then who you want to be the staple of the league, especially for up and coming, is like the Mahomes of the league. And so I was on that defensive side, obviously based on being a defensive guy, but then also some of the things that I encountered in me being super physical, hitting Jay Cutler as hard as I can, even though it was a legal hit and whatnot. I was just kind of pictured in that mindset, and they kind of ran with it, which is great from a media and marketing standpoint. And I'll never forget this. Truthfully, it was an article that came out when we were right before we played Denver, and Tim Tebow. It was the saint and the devil, and I was the devil. So it was super interesting to see how those different things kind of transpired. And I think probably the best advice that I ever got was from Phil Knight. And when it came to like a media marketing, and obviously Nike is an amazing engine, you look at it from standpoint, you continue to be who you are, move smartly, but take advantage of this media attention in your face that's getting out there, and you change the narrative of it. And that's really what I was fortunate enough to do, and have some strong people that give me great advice, and Nike was a big part of that.
Yeah. So how did you change the narrative from being, people would try to label you as a dirty player, or, I can see the whole, good versus evil, especially if you're on the D line and you're trying to attack the pretty boy quarterback and take him down, that narrative makes sense. But you're a physical player, let's face it, and you're a physical force. It's like, you can't help it. It's like a bull in the china shop. It's going to knock down a teapot or two. But at the same time, they tried to label you as this dirty player and, with a hot temper and out of control. And so how did you change that and take control of it?
I truthfully embrace the fact of being physical and dominant, and change the narrative from a standpoint of being consistent to who I am, and playing a very physical sport and imposing my will each and every single time that I had the opportunity to, whether it was a quarterback or running back or whatever it may be. But then being able to change the narrative, a lot of people that are maybe troubled or having difficult times, and you can kind of see their character isn't the best, that spills into the off-field aspects. For me, that never spilled off to the off-field aspects. And so you could never say, this person's dirty, he's a bad person, because off the football field and in any other element you put me in, I'm a strong, smart, and articulate human being that is continuing to do a lot of good things in this world and taking care of their business. So you can't really, the narrative and how everybody spoke about me just wasn't quite matching up.
So let's go back to the Ndamukong Suh brand. This show is called Behind the Brand. I talk a lot about brand and branding. What is your brand? How would you describe it?
My brand is very interesting, and from a standpoint of, I've been super silent about my brand and been very quiet about my brand.
Why?
The reason being, I'm a natural introvert, and I'm not big on talking about myself. And I've also been a person that just likes to move in a stealth manner and really just kind of let my actions speak for themselves. And so when it comes to philanthropic endeavors, or even business and even sports, I'm gonna let my play speak for it. Philanthropic pieces, I'll let other people talk about it, and when it's brought to me, then I'll say yes or no and kind of leave it at that, because I don't want to take great pride in something that I wanted to just do out of the goodness of my heart or my family's heart with our family foundation. And then even from a business perspective, I've been a little bit more open about it, but not from a standpoint of boastful and just saying, yes, I'm working with this group and being able to connect the dots so it's a little bit more out there, but I'm not a self-promoter by any means. So it's been very difficult for me, and over the years my wife has done an amazing job to push me and saying it's okay for people to know the good things that you're doing, because what it'll allow is for people to jump on board with you and support you in those endeavors and those different pieces, and that's where I've been okay with it.
Yeah. Relatable, by the way. I can't tell you how many times I've just been sitting there. I have one of those. Have you heard of the RBF? The resting, what face. Like, so I'm not a big, huge guy like you are, but I'll be sitting there, and I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, "Are you okay? Are you mad?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm just in my head. I'm just thinking. I'm quiet." Very relatable. Are you often misunderstood? Does that happen to you?
I think I think misunderstood is fair in some aspects, but I would also say some people not taking the time to get to know me, because something I care about or choose to care about, I go and take the time to get to know that person and or find out information. And so that's where I would say people have to take the time to get to know me, because of being an introvert and being able to relate to those people, that you're not going to be open and say, here's an open door, come talk to me and do whatever you want to. At the same time, I think it's also, people have to be unbiased and not be biased when it comes to the standpoint of saying, all right, I just saw one thing about you and that's how I'm going to label you, versus saying, all right, let me look at a couple more other pieces. Let me Google you or whatever it may be and say, oh, there's a little more depth to this person, versus just saying, oh, it's the one thing that I saw.
Yeah. Well, how about like with football cliches? The linemen don't get as much respect as the other glory positions, but like, do you get misunderstood in that respect? Like, oh, he's just the whatever guy, fill in the blank, and then you have to go out and prove them wrong?
So that's interesting. From a football perspective, I'd say I'm pretty fortunate from the standpoint of being able to have a lot of limelight and or awareness brought to me because of my play, and being an interior guy. I would say I'm not like most typical interior guys, and have been able to get a handful of accolades and more, to whereas it's more the outside linebackers or corners that kind of receive those things. I've been able to, like I said, been very blessed and fortunate to where that hadn't been the case for me. But also I think that's due to hard work.
Well, and maybe explain for people who don't know football, and I probably just know enough to be dangerous, but like, tell us how complex. I mean, let's go back to the Super Bowl. And by the way, congratulations.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
I can't even imagine, your whole career, right? You're waiting for this pinnacle moment. You made Pro Bowl, and you have all these other, and then finally you win the big game, and it's like, it must be amazing, especially in your 11th year, right?
Yeah, in my 11th year to win the Super Bowl, man, it was a sigh of relief and a ton of enjoyment and really great honor to the overall career that I've been able to establish, and the people that have been along the ride with me, for them to be honored and enjoyed. Especially after being in 2018, 2019 season and going to the Super Bowl and losing by, I think it was like 7 points, and having a dominant defensive performance except for one touchdown. So for me, it was amazing, and especially in the fashion that we won, dominating on defense, the game plan solely put on us up front, and me being a linchpin and a part of that, it felt amazing to be able to win that.
Explain to people who don't know, like, how complex. I mean, I think, you look at the linemen and you go, oh, all you got to do is just basically get in someone's way or get to the quarterback or tackle the running back. But, like, kind of break down how complex. Like, even the style of play that the coach came up with for you guys was very unorthodox, right? Like, you sort of flipped the script on Mahomes and gang. But talk about how complex the thinking and all that had to go into the actual execution.
Definitely complex from the standpoint of, like you said, we ran a Tampa 2 system which is two high safeties, and really what that means in the run game is that you have a very light box where it's only a 6-man box, which is a 4D lineman and 2 linebackers will have to stop the run. And so that puts a lot of pressure on the defensive linemen and especially the interior guys to stop the run. And then additionally, when you stop the run and move to the passing game, it's only 4 guys that have to go and stop, or usually going to go against 5 offensive linemen, maybe a tight end that's chipping, a running back that's chipping, and then you've got a super athletic quarterback that's running all over the field, trying to throw the ball down the field. And I think we did an amazing job with that. But the studying of the game of football is not as simple as everybody thinks. It's not just lining up out there and getting off the ball. There's a lot of things that, one, you have to understand. We, as a defense, I mean, we go into any particular game with anywhere from 60 to 70 different plays that we have to memorize and be able to know, and then off of those plays we have checks and adjustments that we have. But then also, as a veteran and as I've gotten older in this league, and really it started earlier on because I had a great guy named Kyle Vandenbosch that showed me how to watch film. I'm looking for certain triggers, so I'm watching hours upon hours of film of offensive linemen, backup offensive linemen, and then looking at the tight ends in case I got to cover one of them in a drop coverage when I have to drop. So it's super complicated and not as easy as people may think.
Yeah. I had played high school football. I remember watching those films, but like, help us understand, like, what are you watching when you're watching those films? Are you watching like feet? Are you watching hands? Are you watching plays? Are you trying to memorize plays and like formations? What are you looking at when you watch film?
Some of the things that I'm looking for are a little secretive, so I'll keep those away. But just give you a broader view of things that I'm watching. Formations primarily, tendencies they like to do out of certain personnel. So
Yeah.
personnel, as we call it, is 1 back, 1 tight end, and then you go 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
They like to run certain plays, and then they also like to do certain things out of different formations. And one piece some people may understand is you may have trips to one side and you have a single receiver depending on what the formation is to the other side. And if they're in trips formation, they may want to run certain routes. So if I'm dropping in coverage, I have to know who the number 3 guy is. And so he may start as number 3, which is the closest receiver into the line of scrimmage or to the line, but the number 2 receiver may come in and they switch positions. So it's things like that you all have to kind of figure out and be able to have different nuances that, as they like to put in certain players to take advantage of defensive players, those are the things we watch for. And we had 2 weeks to watch, so it was helpful in that manner leading up to the Super Bowl.
You got to respect Mahomes too, because he actually gave you guys props, and I think he was talking to you specifically many times because you had his number that game for sure. But what did you learn about him before the game, about some of his tendencies? Like, did he roll out a certain way, 50% of the time, or like, what did you learn about him to sort of? I mean, you had it dialed, man.
Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for Mahomes, especially going through that game and playing him the second time around. But we definitely learned a lot from playing them the first time around earlier on. I think it was maybe like week 13 or 14 of the season. And one of the things that we learned, but also is consistent with most quarterbacks, is when they roll to their left and get forced to their left, it's very difficult for them to set up and throw the ball across their body. So that was one of our focuses, to get him to move in that direction.
Yeah, so you were pushing to the left.
Yeah, exactly. Get him off his spot and make him have to make very difficult throws. But you can see he's very talented and he has the ability to do that, but it's hard to do that when you're putting him into the dirt.
And that showed. I mean, sometimes he was completely horizontal throwing. It was incredible, like the angles that he had to throw. But you're going to have less consistency, less success when you're either on your toes, flying in the air, like you said, on your back in the dirt. I want to go back to branding for a second. Back to your friend Phil Knight and Nike. A lot of people are thinking about building their own brand, or maybe they have an existing brand right now. And one of the examples that I've heard, which is really good, I heard from one of my mentors, Seth Godin, he talked about, how do you know whether or not you have a brand? And he said, if you go into any hotel like Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, and I go to these hotels all the time. They're great hotels. He says, but go to the carpet and then look down at the carpet and see if you can understand like what hotel you're in. He goes, I'll bet you that you don't know where you're at. And so if you can't really understand the brand from the essence of where you're at, you may not have a brand. You might just have a logo. Contrast that with if Nike built a hotel, we can sort of understand the look and the feel, what it might be like, right? It's very distinctive, and so, the personal brand is super important to build. But what advice would you give to people who are thinking about, building their brand, and even if they're introverted like us, you and I are introverts, we share that in common. What advice do you have about people who are trying to build that brand and be more distinctive?
Yeah, I would say if giving advice to somebody who wants to build their own brand, and from my perspective, you got to be authentic to it, and then being authentic to it, that will ooze out to what people view. And so from my perspective, as you're authentic to all these different pieces in building your brand, it will shape and mold into itself, and it'll become one of a kind. And people will then say, all right, I know that and who this brand really is distinctive. And so when I look at it from a perspective, you take Nike, their brand is being cutting edge and being forward thinking and being able to be the leader in a lot of space. And that's where, from my perspective, I've always wanted to have and be respected in a manner of not necessarily being like every other person, is being able to be different and not being afraid to be different. And I think that's where you're able to separate yourself from a brand perspective. You may be in the same silo, you may be a CPG brand, but what differentiates you from all these other brands, and what makes you stand out? And that's not being afraid to be different in your own particular right.
So how does your philanthropy fold into your brand? How's that fit in? Because you're building houses for people who need it, but it's not exactly low-income houses. Explain what it is and how that sort of grafts into your brand.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Truthfully, I think in my particular brand, when it comes to building and changing the game from a standpoint of low-income housing, I think it's important to have low-income housing and be able to take care of people from a standpoint of that may be less fortunate or need a helping hand. But I've always looked at it from a perspective of saying, how can I take action and give somebody a helping hand, but then propel them to get to another level to where they can be self-sustaining, but then they can turn around and be able to help somebody else and show their examples. And so that's really kind of how I grew up. And really it was from a standpoint of saying, hey, somebody showed me and gave me everything I needed to be successful, and then I became successful on my own. Now, with my success, I can pass along that torch and say, hey, I don't need this torch anymore because I've created my own. Here's your own. Here's a torch for you. You take it, use me as a stepping stool to better yourself. And then it's not necessarily a requirement, but you would hope that person would then say, hey, now I'm going to give back and do that. So that's where this housing YBP is coming to play, where it's young black professionals who come out of college. It's a tough time because you're getting probably your lowest value monetarily from your job, and one of the last things I think those people should have to worry about is having a roof over their head and at an expensive price. So it's kind of the reverse on like Section 8 or low-income housing or affordable housing. It's for professionals that need a stepping stone. They're going to live here for a short period of time or a good period of time, and then they'll be able to move on as they move up in their companies, and then kind of get the American dream of saying, all right, now I can go buy a house and have my family and move into a neighborhood. But also I'm close to the urban core where my everyday job is, versus having to commute and extra costs to be an hour out because that's the only thing I can afford.
Yeah. I love the model. It reminds me of that, give a man a fish, right? Feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime kind of idea, but also this idea of paying it forward. So how does it work? How does someone qualify for it? And where is it happening? Is it just in the Oregon area?
Right now, it's just in the Portland area, and we're in the process of bringing it all online and working with nonprofits. There's some amazing nonprofits as well as grant programs here in the Portland area that we're all partnering with. And we believe at some point in time this can become a nationwide thing. We believe that we have potentially cracked the code of being able to kind of not necessarily eliminate, but be able to change the game when it comes to housing. And as you look at the pandemic that we're going through, a lot of construction is stopping in the Pacific Northwest and around the country because it's so difficult to be able to do those things and develop. So being able to do that and be able to kind of subsidize housing for young professionals to get back into the workforce is very, very important. And I think that's how our economy will bounce back. And it's very creative to how we can pass on the savings as investors and developers, and really we're passing it on to the tenants from a standpoint of we don't have to, because we get breaks and taxes or whatever it may be, we can pass those things on to those individuals, and everybody kind of has a win-win situation.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like the WeWork model, where instead of building offices for people to come co-work in, you're building this house, or it's maybe like executive housing, where like, while you're working for that company, you can stay in those facilities, whether it's apartments or homes or whatever, and then as they get promoted or as they get their feet underneath them, whatever, they move on and the next group comes in. You sort of giving people a little boost when they need it.
And you're around your peers where you can start to collaborate as a unit and work together. So you may have an architect, you may have an engineer, you may have all these different particular people that are in young professionals, and they find ways to work together because they're all it's kind of not co-living, but they're all mingled in a building together to where they all have positive aspirations to continue to grow and work together.
Yeah, it's a community, yeah. So where can people find that? How can they find out more about it?
We're rolling it out right now, and we'll have a lot of documentation on our website here shortly as things get into fine print. So we'll be able to do that via hmsdevelopments.com.
My final question is, what are you afraid of?
What am I afraid of? I'm not afraid of it, but having kids is going to be a massive step as I'm watching these birthing classes and undertaking this piece. It's got me I'll say it's got me a little shook. I know it's gonna be a lot of work, but many other people have had a lot of success, and I look forward to having that same success and more.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that, tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man, always said it. It's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. Ain't nothing changed but the weather. The dangling carrot that hang from the rear view. Your dreams in the past ain't nowhere near you. Backseat drivers got nothing but 2 cents. Shotgun riders too biased, they all liars. I should get an A for effort, I'm too tired, but I'm never giving up, that's why I'm kinda admired. Role model, like it or not, I gotta play it. Sugarcoat the rhyme sometimes, but still say